everybody, welcome back to the homestead. Well, tonight is going to be pizza night here on the homestead, but before we can even think about making pizzas, we need to make some fresh mozzarella cheese. Now that we have our own Jersey milk cow here on the homestead, we're getting more milk than we know what to do with, and making mozzarella cheese is a great way to use some of it up. We've actually been making mozzarella for quite some time here, but since we have our own cow, we're making a lot more than ever. Mozzarella is actually a very easy cheese to make. It's a cheese that you can use fresh, so you can use it the same day that you make it. Unlike cheddar and other cheeses that need to age, mozzarella is something that you can make and enjoy all in the same day. There's only a few ingredients that you need. We're going to go through those and then we're going to get busy making the cheese. So for mozzarella cheese, there's only 4 ingredients. The first and most important ingredient is milk. Now, because we have our own cow, we're using fresh milk. Actually, this was just milked this morning. So we're using this. It still has the cream and everything in it. But if you don't have a cow, you can either buy it directly from a local farmer, which is what we recommend. But if you can't do that either, you can use store-bought milk. You just want to make sure that you use whole milk from the store and make sure that it doesn't say ultra pasteurized. Pasteurized is okay, but not ultra pasteurized. The second ingredient, which is probably the second most important, is rennet. You can get animal rennet or vegetable rennet. We recommend animal rennet. It just seems to work a little bit better for what we have used, and it comes in different strengths. So you want to make sure that when you order it, you look, it will tell you on the label how much to use to set up your milk. The next ingredient is citric acid. Citric acid is used to raise the acidity of the milk before you put the rennet in. Citric acid is also what makes mozzarella cheese nice and stringy and makes it melt super good on your pizza. And then the final ingredient is salt. Salt you will use kind of to your own preference. I'll give you some instructions, but you can do it and add more if you'd like or less if you'd like. Now on our homestead we use pink Himalayan salt, but you can use regular table salt or kosher salt, whatever you have on hand or whatever your preference is. So those are all of the ingredients. Mozzarella is super easy to make. We should be able to make an entire batch in about 30 minutes. So let's get started. So before we get started heating the milk up on the stove, there's a couple things that we need to prepare ahead of time. First is our rennet. What you want to do with your rennet is you want to, again, look at the instructions on the bottle, but in our case we're using animal rennet, and this says right on the bottle that one half teaspoon will set up 2 gallons of milk. So since we're using only 1 gallon of milk today, we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon. So you'll take a 1/4 cup of cool water. You want to make sure that it's non-chlorinated water. So if you live in the city and you have chlorinated tap water, either use bottled water or some other type of non-chlorinated water. Now where we live we have well water, so I can just use tap water, and our well water is excellent. So I'm going to add just a 1/4 teaspoon of rennet to the water and mix it around. And that's all the rennet that we need. When you buy one of these bottles, it may not look like you're getting much, but you use such a small amount at a time that this bottle will last a long time. I will put a link to all of these items in our Amazon shop as well, so you guys can go look at them and know what to get. The next thing is going to be our citric acid. Now this can be purchased online. You can find it right at Walmart in the canning department. This is a really common thing for anybody who does a lot of canning. So for the citric acid, we're going to use a cup of water and 1.5 teaspoons of the citric acid. We're going to put that in there and we're just going to let that dissolve completely. And then we'll be ready to move on to getting our milk ready to actually turn it into mozzarella cheese. Now that our citric acid is completely dissolved in the water, we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump that into our pot. Now you do want to use a pot that will hold probably 2 gallons. You don't want to use a pot where the milk is going to end up coming right up to the top because you need room to be able to stir quite a bit. Now that the citric acid is in, we're going to use 1 gallon of our milk. We're going to just put that right in the pot with the citric acid and water. And we're just going to take a spoon, we're just going to stir that around and make sure that that citric acid is completely incorporated into the milk. Again, all we're doing at this point is trying to raise the acidity of the milk. Now that the citric acid is completely incorporated, we're going to go ahead and turn on the burner. We're going to heat the milk up to 100 degrees. You'll see some differences in different recipes, but anywhere from 90 to 100 degrees is pretty good. I like to do it to 100 degrees. It just seems to turn out a little bit better for me. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the burner. And once the burner is on, you do want to stir the milk pretty much all the time. Otherwise it can burn on the bottom of the pot. Now, I'm just going to use a digital meat thermometer to tell me my temperature. You can get fancy cheese thermometers, but I just don't see a need for that. As long as you have a pretty accurate thermometer, you'll be fine. So whatever type of thermometer you have, this is where you want to start taking the temperature of your milk. It'll get up to 100 degrees quite a bit faster than you think it will, so make sure you're checking it often. So our milk is at about 97 degrees, so just a couple minutes yet, and we'll be all ready to add our rennet. And actually we're already there, we're at 100 degrees. So now we're going to turn the heat off and we're going to move the pot to a cool burner. Now is when we're going to add the rennet. The rennet is what actually turns it into cheese. It separates the curds from the whey. So we're going to be stirring this and we're going to slowly add our rennet. Now when you add the rennet, you want to stir with your spoon kind of from a top bottom like this, because you really want to make sure that you get all of the milk from the bottom of the pot mixed in. If you just add this at the top and don't stir very well, it'll start to kind of coagulate at the top and you'll never get the milk from the bottom incorporated in. So you want to add the rennet and stir like that for 30 seconds. And I think that's about good. So now what we'll do is we'll put a cover on this and we'll let this sit for 10 minutes. When we come back in 10 minutes, you'll see a huge change in the way our milk looks. So while we're waiting the 10 minutes for our rennet to separate the curds from the whey, we also want to get another pot of water heating up. We're going to turn this on back here and we're going to get this water heated up to 175 degrees. We won't use this quite yet, but we do need that water to be hot when we finally get to that step. So get that going and get that up to 175 degrees. Alright, our 10 minutes is up, our timer is going off, so now it's time to uncover this and look at what has happened during that 10 minutes. So at first glance it may not look that much different, but you can see when I take my finger that this has now turned into a big curd on the top of the milk. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a knife and we're going to cut these curds into pieces. We're going to try to cut them into, as close as we can, like 1-inch squares. And this certainly doesn't have to be perfect. What you're really doing is just breaking these into pieces so that in just a minute we can stir them around and it'll be easier to stir instead of one big chunk. Alright, so now that we have those cut into pieces, we're going to turn our heat back on, kind of a medium heat, and we're going to heat this up to 105 degrees. Now that won't take very long because you already had it at 100 degrees and it probably didn't cool down a whole lot during that 10 minutes. So you got to watch it carefully. While that's heating up, we're going to take our spoon and we're just going to stir those curds around in the pot. And you can see how those have really turned into a nice curd and they're separating from the whey. The whey is that yellow liquid and the curds are the white pieces. And again, we're going to do this until it gets up to 105 degrees. And we are there. So once it hits 105 degrees, we're going to turn the heat back off. And now we're just going to continue to stir this for 5 minutes. You want to stir it constantly for the whole 5 minutes. So we're going to set a timer. And we'll just keep stirring. Alright, our timer has gone off. Our 5 minutes are up. Now we're going to bring our pot over and we're going to pour this through a colander to strain off all of the whey. Now you can save this whey and you can use it. In our case, what we do is we use it to give to our pigs because it's an awesome protein for the pigs. But you can also use it as a soup base. You can use it to replace other liquids in your baking. It's just a really good, healthy protein. Make sure you get all of the curds out. And then we're going to just start using our hands to squeeze out as much of the extra whey as we can. And this will get quite a bit smaller in size as you do this, and it'll start to form into a little bit of a ball. It'll still be pretty, separated at this point, but the next step will take care of that. So we're just going to keep squeezing this for probably, 3 or 4 minutes until you feel like you're not getting much more liquid out. And then we'll move on and I'll show you what that pot of water is for on the stove. And let me show you how much whey we ended up with down here in the pot. You can see that that is a good amount of whey. So now we're going to go get that pot of water off of the stove. It's heated up to 175 degrees. We're going to bring that over here. Now at this point, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting the cheese back into the hot water to heat it up. And then we're going to try to squeeze out some more whey. After that, we'll get ready to stretch it and turn it into mozzarella. If you have sensitive hands, you may want to wear some dishwashing gloves or something to help protect your hands at this point, because it is going to be pretty hot. I tend to do it just barehanded, but we'll see how that goes. So we're going to take our whole block here, and we're going to drop it down into our hot water, and we're going to leave it there this first time for about 30 seconds to a minute. We want to really heat it back up as much as we can. Okay, so it's been about a minute, maybe even a little longer. What you're wanting is for your curd to get heated all the way through so it starts to get melty. So we're going to take it back out now. It's really hot at this point, so we're going to put it back in our colander. And I'm going to actually use my spoon and my hands to try to see if we can get more whey out of it. You can see that it's starting to change the texture. It's starting to look almost waxy or plasticky, almost real shiny. That's what you want. That means it's turning into mozzarella. So we're going to try to squeeze out as much as we can. After it's out of the water for a couple minutes, you can start to use your hands. It cools down pretty fast. You can see how stretchy it's starting to get. That's perfect. That's what we want. So from here on out, I'm actually going to break this into 2 pieces to make it a little bit easier to work with. We're going to put it back into the hot water. I'm going to leave it kind of flat so it heats up a little faster in the hot water. And we're going to just put it back in for about another 30 seconds. Now there is a method of making mozzarella that also uses the microwave. If you prefer that method, that's fine. I prefer to do it this way, but if you want to use the microwave method, instead of using this hot water, you would just put your whole curd in a microwave-safe bowl and microwave it for 30 seconds at a time, then take it out and do your stretching and everything. Put it back in for 30 seconds, stretch it again. You do that about 3 times. But we're going to do the hot water method here today. Alright, we're going to take our pieces back out here, and now they're getting really nice and melty, so that's good. We're going to put them back here. We're going to work them just a little bit. And now is where I'm also going to salt them. Use 1.5 teaspoons for the entire thing. So I'm going to use about 3/4 of a teaspoon on each one. You just sprinkle it on, and then as you're working it and stretching it, that's going to incorporate into your cheese. Now if it starts to cool down to the point where you're having a hard time stretching it, you're going to want to put it back in your hot water, or if you're using the microwave method, you're going to want to put it back in the microwave. And do the same thing with this piece here. And again, the salt is according to your taste. This is the amount that we like, but if you like it saltier, go ahead and add more. I'm going to put these back into one piece here. I'm going to put them back in the hot water for a minute and heat them back up. Alright, we're going to take that back out and we're going to try stretching again. And be careful because it's hot. And you're just going to keep doing this over and over. The more you can stretch it, the better your mozzarella is going to turn out at the end. I'm going to do it at least one more time after this. So I'm going to heat this back up one more time. And we'll stretch it one more time. Alright, that's nice and melty again. So we're going to just bring it right out of the water and stretch it real good. And the more you get it to stretch, the better. This is turning into some really nice mozzarella. Alright, I think that's probably about good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold it back up. We're going to start turning it into a nice ball of mozzarella cheese. The way that you do that is you just start working it with your hands. You can see how nice and smooth that's getting on top. And I'm by no means an expert at this part. So once we have a nice ball, we're all done. That's all there is to making mozzarella. What we're going to do now is we're going to put this in some type of container to put in the refrigerator. We're going to cover it real tight so that the air stays out of it, so that it doesn't dry out too much. And then as soon as this is cooled down enough, we'll be able to shred it and use it on our pizza. Well, in our homestead, we like to make as much as we can from things that we grew. So this meal tonight, our pizza, now that we can make our own cheese, is going to be almost 100% from things that we have raised. The only thing that will be is the flour from the wheat, because we don't have enough room to grow our own wheat, or we probably would. We're going to start off by making two things on the stovetop. We're going to start by making some pork sausage from the pigs that we raised last year, and also some pizza sauce from our own home canned tomato sauce. Let's get started. Now, we never can pizza sauce. We just can tomato sauce and then turn it into pizza sauce when we want to make pizza. Makes it a lot more universal that way. So we're going to start with just a pint of tomato sauce and some oregano that we dried from the herb garden this year. We're just going to mix that together and let it simmer. That's really about all we use. I'll probably add a little garlic powder and a little onion powder after it simmers for a while. And then maybe just a teaspoon or so of sugar if it's a little too acidic. But other than that, that's all we do, and it turns out great. So we're just going to put this on a simmer and let that heat up while we make our pork sausage. So while our sauce is simmering, we're going to start on the pork sausage. Now the pigs that we raise, because of the way we raise them back in the woods and they have so much room to run and just stay in shape, they don't end up super fatty. So the ground pork that we're using today is super lean. So because of that, I'm going to put a little bit of our home rendered lard in the pan first. I've got a pound of pork sausage from our pigs last year. We always freeze all of our ground meat flat like this in the freezer because it thaws out really easy and can make a nice quick meal. I'm going to be adding some of this mild Italian sausage seasoning. This is really sold so that you can make big quantities of sausage all at once, but we just keep it in the cupboard like this and just season the sausage as we need it, or season the meat as we need it. So for 1 pound we use a tablespoon of this seasoning. And I have found that the easiest way to do that is to just add it right to my Ziploc bag. Zip it back up and just work all of that sausage seasoning right in. Once that's all mixed up real good with all the seasoning, we're just going to add the pork to our pan. While the sausage is cooking and the sauce is simmering, we're going to just slice up a couple veggies to put on our pizza as well. We're going to start with a nice onion. And then we're also going to slice up a nice red pepper from the garden. We went out yesterday and picked as many of the remaining peppers as we could out of the garden because tonight is our very first freeze warning for the year. So whatever's out there after tonight isn't going to be any good. So we went out yesterday and picked as many as we could. Now these are a sweet pepper. These are not a hot pepper. So we're just going to cut these as well. Alright, so we got all of our veggies cut up. We'll set those off to the side till later. Let's go check on the pork sausage. And if that's done, we're ready to start making our crust. I think that looks done. We'll just turn it off. We'll leave it in the pan. The sauce is simmering nicely back here. That'll thicken up nicely by the time we need it. It's time to start making our crust. Okay, so we're going to use my favorite pizza crust recipe today. I've already done a video, in-depth video about how to make this, so I'll leave a link to that, but I'll just go over it briefly as we make it today. Today we're going to make it with half whole wheat flour and half organic all-purpose flour. That makes it nice and light, but still gives you some of those good whole grains from the whole wheat flour. So we're going to use a 3/4 of a cup of each type of flour. We're going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of yeast, 3/4 of a teaspoon of organic sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of the pink Himalayan salt. So we're just going to put all of those dry ingredients together. We're going to use our whisk and mix that up really well. Now to that we're going to add 3 tablespoons of oil. I'm using sunflower oil. And I like to add that with the whisk, not with the dough hook. So I just add that in while the whisk is still running. Then we'll switch over to our dough hook and just add some nice warm water. We've got our dough hook on, so now we're going to add 2/3 of a cup of warm water. I don't add it all at once. I always leave a little bit back in case that was too much. The humidity can play a lot of tricks on dough, so one day things might be a little bit different than another day. So, alright, our dough is done. I've got a little bit of flour here spread out on my kneading board. We're going to use a dough scraper to get the dough out of the bowl. And like I said, it'll be a little bit sticky at this point. That's okay. We'll just roll it on that dough, or on that flour, just like that. And then we're going to cover it and we're going to let it sit. My original recipe said for 10 minutes. I don't really time it anymore. What I do is I go and turn the oven on. I set it at 450, and when the oven is done preheating, that's about 10 minutes, and that's when I start using the dough. Okay, our oven is preheated, so it's time to start rolling out our dough. Now you do want to make sure you have plenty of flour to be rolling it on so it doesn't stick. You can do this right on your counter, or if you have a kneading board like I have, it works perfectly. Get a lot of flour on there, and then we'll just start rolling it out. Now it depends on the size of your pizza pan, about how big you want to roll it out. Now this recipe can be doubled if you like a thicker crust, or this is going to be a fairly thin crust pizza today. Put a little more flour on top so it doesn't stick. Now the easiest way to transfer this to your pizza pan is to fold it up. And then just unfold it on your pan. Perfect. Then what I like to do is just take a fork and just tap it all over like this. That way if there's any air pockets in the dough, they won't turn into big bubbles in your oven. So we're going to go ahead and put this in the oven for about 5 minutes before we start putting all of our toppings on. Alright, while that crust is getting done in the oven for a few minutes, let's take a look at the cheese that we made earlier. Look at how beautiful that is. Let's get it out of our bowl here. Look at that. That is an awesome piece of mozzarella cheese. We need to shred this so that we can use it on our pizza because it won't do us much good just like this. So let's go ahead and shred it. I found the easiest way to do that is with a food processor. You can do it by hand, but this saves you a lot of time. Alright, that's all shredded. I think it did pretty well considering that, like I said, it wasn't super cold. There we go. Can you believe we made that today? That's awesome. Alright, our dough is just about, or our crust is just about ready to take out, so let's set this aside. We can start putting our pizza together. Alright, so our crust is baked for 5 minutes. It's perfect right now. So it's time to start adding all of our toppings. We'll start with our homemade sauce. Put as much as you like. Next, we're going to put on the homemade mozzarella. I don't know if we'll need all of it, but you gotta have plenty of cheese on a pizza. Now get it spread out as well as you can, but remember that this will melt so nice in the oven too. Alright, now we'll put our other toppings on, and then maybe we'll sprinkle a little more cheese on top of those. Start with our sausage, and now we'll put on our onions and peppers. Then we'll sprinkle a little more cheese on top. Kind of helps hold everything in place. Look how awesome that looks. Let's get that in the oven because I can hardly wait to eat it. Alright, we're going to put it in for about 7 minutes to start with. Then we'll check on it, and then from there on out, just check it every few minutes until it's perfect and however much brown you like on the top of the cheese. Okay, our timer just went off. It's been 11 minutes since we put it back in. I think it's looking awesome. Look at that. Alright, we need to let it cool off a little bit before we cut it and try some. But can you believe that we made that? We started with just a gallon of milk this morning, made that cheese, grew all of those veggies, made the crust, raised that pig. That's awesome. As soon as this cools down, we're going to cut it and give it a try. Alright, it's cooled for a while. Let's cut it up and take a bite. Look at that. That is awesome. The cheese melted so nicely. So there you go, you guys. That was a great day making cheese and then making this pizza completely from scratch. I hope you enjoy these types of videos. We love to show you how we live here on the homestead and why we go to all the work that we do to raise our own food. If you're enjoying our channel but aren't a subscriber yet, don't forget to hit the subscribe button before you leave. If you do subscribe and you want to help us out, the absolute best way that you can do that is to share our videos on all of your social media with people that you think would enjoy them. And until next time, thank you guys so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care, and God bless.